I got my clerical education at our Adolphson School for Deacons. And there I learned that the word gospel means good news. I was also taught that before writing a sermon, one should look for the good news in that day's gospel. When I did so this week, I was drawn again and again to the powerful question that Jesus asked his disciples, and asked us, of course. Who do you say that I am? I gave that a lot of thought before it dawned on me that Mark had not recorded the good news in these verses. He had not done so because the good news is in the answers we give, each of us, to Jesus' question, who do you say that I am? Surprisingly, we create our own good news. I thought that Peter's quick response, "You are the Christ, the Messiah," was really a great answer. So I was surprised when Jesus, rather than congratulating Peter for his insight, sternly orders his disciples not to tell anyone. Perhaps you too wondered why. Why do Peter and the other disciples have to postpone proclaiming to the world that the long-awaited Messiah has arrived? I think Jesus issued this order because Peter and the other disciples, like most Jewish people, had some distorted expectations of what the Messiah would do. See, most people believed that the Christ would usher in an endless era of justice, an endless era of peace, and for sure the hated Romans would be forced to leave. Jesus corrected the disciples' idealized picture of the Messiah. It must have dampened their enthusiasm when he says, "I will undergo great suffering. I'll be rejected by the leaders of our faith, and I will die." The disciples must have been horrified. But then Jesus continues, "After 3 days, I will rise from the dead." Wow. Now the disciples must really have been stunned. These Jewish people had just heard the complete opposite of their deeply rooted, long-held expectations of the Messiah. Of course, the disciples knew Jesus was blessed with great power. Hadn't he walked on water? Hadn't he changed water into wine? Hadn't he healed the sick, even raised the dead to life? But for Peter, or any of the disciples, to conquer one's own death was way beyond imagination. I think it's interesting to realize and remember that while Jesus was so highly thought of, none of his followers at that time could have answered the question, "Who do you say that I am?" with, "You are God." Even after Jesus' resurrection, the question, "Who do you say that I am?" would not go away. The question was debated for over 300 years. That's longer than we've been a country. This debate was so intense that at times it threatened to break up the Roman Empire. To prevent or at least delay civil war, the Roman Emperor Constantine had to act. So he invited all the bishops, all the priests, even all the deacons, that's over 1,800 clergy, to come together in Nicaea, a small city in modern Turkey. They would have to decide the crucial question, crucial to Christianity: who is Jesus? Some 300 were able to make the journey, but why did they have to travel to Nicaea? Certainly there must have been plenty of accommodations in Rome. Who knows? Perhaps the emperor had some close relatives in Nicaea that were in the hotel business. Regardless, the attendees got to work. Surely the Holy Spirit was present, for they really did a great job. The Nicene Creed was born. To this very day, we repeat these powerful words. For myself, I find this an essential part of my Sunday morning worship. Then Jesus turns to the crowd. He speaks to them about becoming his disciples. And he gives them some tough disciplines, like, my disciples are to deny themselves. They're to take up their cross and they're to follow me. Jesus' portrait of discipleship in the first century was certainly not an easy one. I began to wonder, what should it mean right now, some 2,000 years later, to be a follower, a disciple of Jesus? In Jesus' culture, a person was most clearly defined by those to whom he or she belonged. Belonged, but not in the sense of slavery, but belonged in the sense of family. Followers of Jesus became a part of a new, living, life-giving family. And while members of the family lived a fresh new life, it was also a life that contained some self-denial, even some suffering. Today's gospel is from the 8th chapter of Mark. Before it, there are 7 chapters, half of Mark's gospel, about Jesus going about alleviating suffering, alleviating oppression. So clearly, Jesus does not endorse suffering for suffering's sake. However, he warns his disciples there will be some experiences of suffering. Those who follow Jesus take on their own cross and have a unique way of living, a unique way of loving. I think that's why Jesus tells the crowd, those that lose their lives for my sake will save their lives. Perhaps one reason why Jesus came to walk on earth was so that we would really know with whom we would someday be eternally walking. Now, my wife Nancy and I take a good walk nearly every day. As we walk, we talk, sometimes about friends, sometimes about family. Sometimes we reflect upon important issues in our lives. And Jesus' question, who do you say that I am, can also be a topic for many a mile. We find our faith strengthened by questions about the divine, questions that are not possible for us to fully answer now. I'm certain this is part of the reason Jesus continues to ask us this question, who do you say that I am? Who do you say that Jesus is?